Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Elisa and today we will talk about the iconic melody of Spanish Romance. As a classical guitarist, understanding the music that you are playing leads to a much more profound interpretation of the piece. Observing the score and really studying what's written can help with that. But before we really get into that, I want to share some piece of advice with you. Always keep listening to the music. A score is merely a code, and this code is used by the composer to communicate with the performer, and it can open up a wonderful piece of music. But you, as a performer, you will be communicating with the listener. And of course, that will happen primarily through what you and they can hear. I have already separated the melody and the accompaniment of this piece. It looks like this. We will only be talking about the A section of this piece today. The piece is written in 3/4, which means there are 3 beats each bar, and each beat is a quarter note long. The key of the piece is E minor, and it has 16 bars. These aspects of this piece can be seen as the piece's identity card. These are a few basic facts that you need to know about your piece before you start. Now it's time for first impression. First thing I notice when I see this melody written down is the rhythm. They're all chord notes, except for the very last one, which is 3 beats long instead of 1. Another first impression, the range of the piece. The highest note we see is this super high E, and the lowest is the middle E, the one on the open first string. Another thing that really catches the eye is this D sharp on the 3rd system. Now that you have the melody separated, play those bars and really listen to the effect of the D sharp. It's so beautiful. The D sharp itself is already really beautiful, but it's the interval that comes after that makes it extra interesting. We go straight to C natural from D sharp, which is an augmented interval, and you can really hear the dramatic effect that this has. Now that we've had our first impression, let's go back to the score. We will continue by asking a question that can really raise a lot of interesting material. And this question is there any repeated material or any motific material? On the first question, we can say no. There is no repeated material, except for the fact that the whole phrase is repeated, but that doesn't count. Then, motific material. This is where, for me, it gets really interesting. This melody starts with 4 times the same note. 4 times the B. This little motif occurs 3 more times. First, we have this at the start on the B. Starting from the 5th bar, we have this same little motif up on the high E. Same thing, couple of notes higher. Then at the last system, we have this on the F sharp. And at the very end, on the E. Which brings us back to the range of this melody. We already said the highest note is the high E, and the lowest is the open first string, also an E. Now the piece starts at a B, which is, let's say, in the middle. After this B has occurred and melody starts to unfold, we go up to the highest point of the melody and start with this motif. Then, the third system. We go back to the B. This time, the motive is not used. But it could have been. It could have been instead of this. It could have been 7 Bs. Thankfully, it wasn't that, because what is written now is so much more beautiful. But it could have been. I mean, we started at the B, we go up to the E, and we go back to this B, but instead of doing a predictable thing, he goes around the B a little bit, and up and back to the B, and then the melody continues. So we started in the middle, we went up, we went back to the middle, and then at the end, we go to the lower parts. Another very distinctive element of this melody is the way that the melodic lines go down. It's not a straight line, but there's always this repeated note somewhere that makes us stop a little bit. For example, it starts already at the very beginning. Repeated, repeated. Repeated note, again, again, To me, these two motivic elements really make this melody. So firstly, these 4 notes that are repeated. And secondly, the idea that very, very often the third beat of the previous bar, that note is repeated on the first beat of the next bar. We've done quite some observation now, and it's time to use these observations to create an interpretation of the piece. When you have created an interpretation, it's time to figure out the technical things that you need to do to bring forward that interpretation. Let's start with the first motive, the one with the 4 repeated notes. There are a lot of possibilities on how to play this. But no matter which one you choose, be consistent about it. Because this appears 4 times in this one melody alone, and it will create some coherence if you use the same idea 4 times instead of using 4 different ideas. One way to play this is to go throughout the whole piece and just say, I'm going to make an accent on the first beat for the whole thing. Another option is to create a little crescendo each time this occurs. another way, is to make it as flat as possible. It's 4 repeated notes, so maybe just play them exactly the same all the way through. Like that. Believe it or not, that's actually the most difficult option. Okay, so we have experimented with some possibilities. You've tried it out, you've listened to it, and you probably figured out which one you like most. So now that you've made your interpretation, it's time to figure out how to make this happen technically. Let's look at the first option, only that one. This is very straightforward. If you want to do an accent on the first beat and the other ones a bit less, try to do a rest stroke for the first and the other one's free stroke. That creates quite some levels. Now if you do the crescendo one, it's not that black and white. If you like that, I suggest that you experiment for yourself and you see what you can do with only rest stroke and what you can do with only free stroke. For example, if you would only do free stroke, it might sound a bit like this. And if you would do only rest stroke, if you do only rest stroke, the whole thing already starts louder. So your whole range will be up a little bit, your dynamic range. And if you would do only free stroke, for most of us that would mean that the general dynamic level is a bit lower. Using free stroke gives some, rest stroke, gives some stability because you always can lean back on the next string. But to me, using free stroke creates a bit more flexibility. So it's up to you to experiment and to listen, of course, to what sounds the best, and then maybe also combine it with the accompaniment to see if you can still play it that way when the accompaniment joins in. But don't make that a priority. First, melody, interpret it, shape it, and then see if you can make it work. And if necessary, you can adjust afterwards. But we don't want our technical ability to lead our interpretation. Another thing to look at is the range of the piece. I talked about this before. It starts somewhere in the middle, then it goes up, then it goes down to the middle again, and then it goes to the lowest point. There is some general guidelines that when a melody goes up, you can increase your volume, and when a melody goes down, you will decrease your volume. This piece kind of works well with that. So if you want to give that a try, a way to match this up with your technical ability is to go to the highest note, better, the lowest, and the middle. And see for yourself where your dynamic range is. How loud can you make that E that it still sounds nice and that it fits in the piece? And how silent can you make that last E that it's still audible? And then somewhere in between you need to find that B. So that's your first exercise if you want to try this out. And when you feel like you have the muscle memory for all these dynamic ranges that you want to apply, you start playing the melody and you fill in all the gaps. For example, if you start like this, go a little bit softer to the low E, and then we go all the way up to the loudest. Now we're in the middle again. stay there a little bit. Ooh, high. Back to the middle. We're going down. It takes quite some control to really get that where you want it to be. But it's a very, very good exercise. I suggest you try it and try not to go crazy. All the way at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that this piece is in E minor. E minor natural would be E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D natural, and E. Now, there are three types of minor scales. There is also the melodic minor, which means that you start in minor, but when you reach the higher notes, you will adjust a little bit so it becomes more natural. Now you do C sharp, D sharp, and E. This way you create a semitone between the 7th and the 8th, so the first again. It creates a bit more tension and it really draws your attention. The third option is harmonic minor. This scale is used to alter the dominant chord into a major chord. Because if you would not do that, your 5th chord would be a minor chord. And that just doesn't work as well when you want to create tension, relaxation, tension, relaxation, which frankly classical music is all about. So what they do is use the D sharp, but leave the C natural. It sounds like this. We don't use it that often in a melodic way. It's more meant to create the chords, like A minor, 4th, subdominant, and then the B with the D sharp, and back to E. If you wouldn't do that, that would sound like this. It's beautiful too, but in the language of classical music, this one is more fitted. In this melody, however, they do use it in a melodic way. So, this measure really is something to think about. Like, it's so beautiful. Do you want to make it dramatic? Or like that? Or do you want to be more delicate about it? Like that? These are also things to think about. This was just one small aspect of how to analyze your music and observe the score. It can go so far if you want to analyze a big piece that has many layers, is very long, has different motives, different tonalities, all of that. And even just the melody of this piece alone, I could go on for a lot longer. But let's just leave it at this for today. And if you have any questions or you would like to share your own ideas, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can find all the information below this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching and I'll see you some other time. Bye!